Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, self-acceptance advocate, hype girl, and founder of More Than Inc. In this podcast, we talk about the things that actually matter, from mental health to health and wellness, body image and confidence, and social issues. We're here to uplift, educate, inspire, and grow together. Each week, we'll feature a unique and incredible woman to share her story of how she's so much more than whatever you may know her as. We'll laugh, cry, and feel inspired in every episode, and trust me, there's no topic off limits. Whether you're commuting, working, or enjoying a glass of wine, we're so honored to have you here, and I'm excited to welcome you to the More Than movement. We're just getting started. This week's guest is here to empower this community and chat all about affirmations, manifesting, and living with purpose. She's a former Miss Arkansas USA model and actor who is willing to hustle to create a life she loves. From being a Lyft and Uber driver to traveling the world, her positive perspective and joy for life is contagious. In this episode, we talk about her journey to true self-love, the power of affirmations, morning routines, building friendships, fasting, meditation, faith, and most importantly, finding your true purpose. Grab your journal because she's giving tangible advice that you won't want to miss. It's my pleasure to introduce you to my friend, Leah Blefko. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast, Leah. I'm so excited to have you.
So excited to be here. This is so fun to reconnect and get to chat.
I know. And I was trying to think today, the last time I actually saw you, I think was in Miami, right?
And how many years ago was that? I mean,
gosh, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Social media, we get to keep up, which is so fun. And I'm so glad for that. But yeah, it's been a while. So
it has been. But one of the things that I love about you is I feel like you have this ability to just like light up the space that you walk into. And you're always just so positive and so vibrant, which is probably why I was instantly attracted to you and was like, I got to be friends with this chick. So I really want to get to know more of your story just because we haven't gone in depth before. So I want to hear like, why are you the way that you are? Tell me some of the stuff that shaped you into who you are.
I first off really appreciate that compliment. And I would say like an ongoing affirmation for me is just reminding myself that I'm a light and that it's my purpose. It's part of my purpose to make sure that I'm raising the frequency and the vibration of not only myself, but those around me. I've been asked in the past, like, what's, one word to describe like your purpose, I guess. And the word for me has always been like encouragement. And I just feel like I'm meant to encourage others. I'm meant to, again, and it's always me too. Like I have to first encourage myself and give that love to myself. And then once I've done so, I can then go share it with others. And I think, that in itself summarizes a big part of, I guess, my mindset, my intention behind everything I do, whether it be my relationships, my personal growth, my career, just chasing my dreams, any of it. I think it's just knowing that that is a part of my purpose. And I think everything I've done has kind of helped me to this point to understand that. I think when we're younger, we can't always like pinpoint or find the right verbiage to describe things, but we know it, and I'm very intuitive. So I was always very in touch with things. But I definitely think in the more recent years, I've realized that is a big part of my purpose. And I definitely feel like I'm living my truth and living to like my highest self when I'm in touch with that. How I operate, I guess.
Which is one of the things that I think I love about you is just you're so self-aware. And I love that you use the word intuitive too, because I feel like that perfectly encompasses you. Like you're just really in check with yourself. Have you always been that way? Did something happen that made you that way?
Probably when I moved to LA is when it really started taking off. And I became so much more aware of my awareness, which was such a beautiful thing. And I'm so like forever grateful for my family, if you will. It's my group of friends out in LA that have become family to me that I definitely think they brought that out in me and they encouraged me and helped me, learn so much in that process. So I think it was always there. I just didn't quite know, because I do think being intuitive is one of my greatest gifts. And I didn't understand, I guess, how to use my gift yet, and I think that's a part of when I say the encouragement thing. I think it's just so important for us to pursue what we feel like those kind of purposes are within us. And purpose doesn't always mean like my purpose is to be a rock star, and it might be, or to be a billionaire or whatever. Like I like to look at it as more the internal purpose and what gifts we have within us that we're then supposed to share. And then it'll of course manifest in maybe a career or a relationship in some form. It really became apparent to me in the past like 3 years, I would say.
That's awesome. And did you move to LA 3 years ago for modeling?
Yeah, so kind of crazy. And so I currently live in Puerto Rico. I just moved here a few months ago, and I've been sharing with people my story. And as I'm an adult now, I'm like, wow, I really have lived in so many places now. So very quickly, I was born in Tennessee, moved to Kansas, grew up in Kansas, went to college in Arkansas, which is when I was Miss Arkansas while I was going to school there. After that, moved to Kansas City, Missouri for a job. And then from there moved, I think it was about 2 years later, to Los Angeles for LA. I had signed with Wilhelmina Models out there and didn't really ever expect modeling to go beyond my little Midwest modeling in, Kansas and some modeling with Miss Arkansas in Arkansas. I never expected that. And I just really I just trust God that I was led there for a reason. And again, it's showing in where my life is now. But it was essentially modeling that took me out there. But now I'm like, wow, I really have lived in a lot of places.
I love that.
And it's beautiful. It's all there. Each part had a purpose.
Yep. It's a journey. And mistake me if I'm wrong, but when you were in Kansas, you were a sideline reporter, or you were working in sports in some capacity, weren't you?
Yeah. So in college at Arkansas, I double majored in sports management and then broadcast journalism. So my intention in college was sideline reporting. So actually at the time I was working for the SEC network while still in college. And I have footage of me sideline reporting for volleyball games, women's soccer. I did a few women's basketball. I did some golf things. Track, cross country was really big at Arkansas. That was actually a really exciting sport to cover because we were really good. So I was doing that while in college. And then when I graduated, I wasn't really sure as I was approaching graduation if I wanted to continue in sports management, but I had a God thing happen, and I actually ended up getting hired by the Kansas City Royals professional baseball team to be the game day MC and host. So I was basically doing really fun game day stuff throughout the stadium, playing games with fans, interviewing, all the people at the stadium, sharing facts about Royals, just doing fun things. And that was kind of giving sports broadcasts out of school a chance kind of situation. And after that, it was a great season. I loved working for them, but I knew that my heart just wasn't in there anymore for that. And I'm super grateful because I got so much real experience in college.
Yeah.
The SEC network and then our Razorback Sports Network. So I got so much experience that by the time it was to be in the real world, I was able to kind of know where I wanted to be. So, but that was a dream job. I mean, I love sports. I grew up on Kansas City sports. So I grew up going to the Royals games all the time. So it's getting that job was such a blessing, and super grateful for that time. Yeah.
And what happened that made you decide that was an awesome chapter, but I'm ready for something more. I want to go in a total different direction and try modeling in LA.
That's another crazy story.
Give them to me all. I love it.
I got a lot of crazy stories I'm realizing as people ask. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So I actually was craving more in Kansas City. I was working after the Royals gig, I was kind of working for a marketing firm. I've worn a ton of hats in my time, and I'm very grateful for that as well. Someday when I raise kids, I want them to try every job there is out there, every sport, every activity. I want them to really experience things because I definitely learned so much from all the different hats I wore. But I was working at a marketing job, and I was like, I just want more. I want to travel. I want to be in the world. I want to explore the world. I should be a flight attendant. And I was like, oh, a flight attendant would be fun. I had thought about it for years too. And then I finally was like, let's just do it. So I applied to be a flight attendant, and I am kind of going through the process for a year or so. It's actually kind of a hard process. People don't really know that. I mean, I guess I didn't know that going into it. But it's a long process. So I got hired. I remember it was November of that year. And they told me that my training date would like maybe be January 1st, but just to be patient. So I was like, okay, like whatever. November passes, hadn't really heard anything. December approaches, hadn't heard anything. And I talked to my agent in Kansas City, who's my mother agent. And I was like, hey, you know, I'm going to be becoming a flight attendant soon. I'll be based most likely in California because the airline, I got hired by United and they place a lot of people in San Francisco their first year. So I was like, I'll probably be placed in California. What if we like got me an agency out there? You know, I'll be able to bop around. Like that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, you're going to have to like lose some inches though. You're going to have to like, yeah, classic. And by the way, I'm still with my agent. I love her. Shout out to my agent in Kansas City. Like this, but it's just the industry sometimes,
Yep.
you know? And to be honest, at that time, it was still very much like that. And so she was very honest and she was like, I can push you in Kansas City. I did so well. Like my body in Kansas City it was perfect for the Midwest, but she was like, if you're going to go into an LA office, you're going to have to get some things worked out. She was like, so no problem though. We have plenty of time. Like, you know, you'll probably not even, you know, till summer. We were thinking this is December. We were like, oh, not till summer will I go meet with agencies. And I'm getting bored because United still hasn't got back to me. It's January 1st, January 15th, January 30th, still haven't heard. And I'm like, wow, like I thought I'd be training by now. Like I quit my job. I'm just, you know, modeling and blogging. At the time I was blogging, you know, making social media income essentially to stay afloat. And I called my agent. I was like, listen, I've been working really hard in this time off. And I think I might be ready to go. I was like, I'm kind of just sitting around. Like, what's the worst that could happen if I just go to LA now and meet with some agencies? Like, let's just try. And worst case, they tell me go lose 50 pounds. Oh, I didn't mean to lose 50 pounds, but go lose 50 pounds, 5 inches, whatever, come back in the summer. And the timing would be perfect. Yeah. So she was like, are you sure? Like, come in. It hasn't been that much time. Like, whatever. I was doing hot yoga. And that's where my love for hot yoga came in. It really transformed my body. And so I go in, she takes my measurements and she was like, okay, let's do it. Like, I'll send you out. So I think she sent me to sent my portfolio to 20 agencies. And I think 5 responded that they would like to meet me. So I was like, wow. Great. So I fly out to LA in the middle of February, end of February going into March. And Wilhelmina was the biggest agency that wanted to meet with me, and then others. And, you know, in modeling, like any agency that wants to see you, that's a good thing. Like, it's great. Yeah. Sometimes smaller ones are the better ones anyways. Like, they can focus on you more. So I was just grateful to have anything on the calendar. And I get to LA and I'm on my way. I'd met with a few other agencies. I'm on my way to my Wilhelmina one. And I remember in LA, I had a 30-minute Uber ride to get to the Wilhelmina location from where I was staying. I'm on my way and I refresh my email and I have my email from United saying, yeah, finally, months. I mean, this is November. We're going into March now. I get my email in that car ride on my way to Wilhelmina in LA saying, here's your training date, reply within 72 hours, confirming that you'll be here in 2 weeks or something crazy. And I'm like, God, I mean, man, you are really putting it out on a tray for me right now. You're like, oh, do you want chicken or steak for dinner? Like, make your choice now. So I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, focus, be present, Leah, close that out right now. You can look at that after you're going into a really big meeting. So I just let it be. I go into Wilhelmina. I have a great meeting with my agent who then became my agent. And they offered me on the spot. That was the only agency that put out a contract and said, you can sign on the dotted line. We want you. Wow. And my agent was like, can you move here by June 1st? And I'm like, that's just a few months away. And I'm like, I'm broke at the time. I don't even know how. I haven't been working for months, thinking I was starting a new job. And she was like, yeah, you can be here June 1st. And I was like, okay. So I walk out, I call my agent. She was like, oh my God, they gave you paperwork. They said they were going to send me paperwork. And I was like, yeah, they said they're going to email it to you. She's like, Leah, that means they're signing you. And I'm like, what? And I just never would have guessed it. So I get back to Kansas City and my agent and I meet and I said, I don't know what to do. And she was like, you want my honest advice? And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm talking to you. And she was like, you can be a flight attendant whenever. She was like, Wilhelmina wants you now. And if you ever had any goals or aspirations in taking your modeling and acting further, because I did commercial acting in Kansas City too. She was like, this would be your shot. So wow. I did it. I spent March through June 1st, which wasn't a lot of time, working like 5 jobs. I was Uber driving. I was a Lyft driver. I was modeling. I was blogging. I was working at a golf course. I was babysitting. I mean, I was
hustling.
I was just hustle mode, like I knew that this was, and all of a sudden it like my little Leah, like little self was like validated and celebrated that I probably did think at some point in my however many 24 years to that point that like it would be really cool to go model in Los Angeles, to live in LA, to live in Hollywood and do it. But I guess I just never thought I was enough to do it. And I didn't really know a lot of people who did it. And I didn't think it was really possible, if I'm being honest, for myself. I was always confident, but I didn't think it was possible. So then when that happened, it was just like, I wanted to work hard and hustle for those months because I was seeing a dream that I didn't even think had a shot coming true. Nothing that could have gotten in my way at that point. And now it's led me to where I am today. And it's just, I'm no longer with Wilhelmina. That actually ended during COVID. And it's been a huge blessing. And I'm super grateful for all 2 years that I had with them. It took me there and gave me a life that I didn't even think was possible. So that was a very long-winded answer, but
No, I love it. That's a testament to stepping outside of your comfort zone, that I think that I relate to that exact feeling of like, I just never knew it was possible because you didn't either see it, you didn't think you're enough. There's all these things. I think every single one of our listeners can relate to. There's all something we want that we just assume that we can't have. Yeah. It's out of reach.
Yeah. You literally don't know it until, and sometimes it's like, you need to see someone close to you doing it, but we also like, I don't like to get too caught up in that either. Cause it's good to use that as inspiration of, oh, it's possible. They have it too, but not comparing, because it's never going to be the same. And that's why when I tell that story too, I always like to tell people like all the jobs that I was working at that time. Cause it's like, not everyone's jobs or hustle or, circumstances are the same. It's not always, it's not apples to apples. And just knowing that like, but if it's something that you feel in your heart that you want to do and it's worth the risk, then the reward is it's going to be sweet. You're going to learn a lot. It's going to be hard, but I guess it just depends how you look at it and keep a good attitude through it all, and surround yourself with good people. I definitely think that's a big part of all of it,
Absolutely. I was doing my little meditation devotional this morning and a quote popped up in my mind that totally relates to what you just said. It said, staying in the same place is hard and growth is hard. Choose your hard. Oh, right? Yeah, I'm like, I feel like it was meant just for this. I like journaled it down and it just popped in my mind when you said that. Because it's so true that I feel like life is hard. Point blank, life is hard for everybody. There's hard moments, there's hard pockets, no matter how privileged or unprivileged you might be. But I mean, staying in the same place is hard. Growing is hard. Yeah. And it doesn't look the way that it's going to look for your specific scenario as somebody else. And I think that's really important to note, because even if you did the same things as your girlfriend next to you that had the same dreams, like you guys are going to end up in 2 different places.
Totally. And understanding too, giving yourself grace in the process, that it also typically never like goes exactly as planned. Like it doesn't. And just being open to that and kind of enjoying that process and knowing that it's like a part of the ride. And every time one of those obstacles pops up or something that just seems a little more difficult than I wanted it to be, of course, I just remind myself I ask, like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Like, what lesson can I pull out of this? Like, how is this going to make me better and prepare me for where I feel like God is taking me next? And just trusting that process and being, present in the moment. That's something I've always been a present person, but a book I'm reading right now is really challenging me to be so present that it's like nothing can really affect us at all if we're literally present.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful, reminder of staying kind of the course and just showing up as you are right now and just knowing who knows where it's going to go, but and do the things right now. That's going to get you there,
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that helps a lot with anxiety as well, is that you're not worrying about what the next step's going to be when you're really focused on just absorbing this full moment.
Totally. And even with anxiety too, I got so anxious the other day not randomly. I mean, there were circumstances that led to it, but I checked in immediately and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, you're anxious. You're kind of freaking out right now. Like you feel like you could cry. And I was like, okay, right now, be in this moment, take a deep breath, take another one. And I just like really was present with my body at that moment. And I was like, everything's awesome. It's literally okay. Like there, of course that happens and things come up and sometimes we can't control those reactions, especially when it comes to the body reactions, whether it be anxiety or a panic attack or whatever it might be for someone. But just again, coming back to the present moment and checking in and realizing like, okay, I am in control of this moment right now. And if I show up right now and I'm present here where my feet are, I'm going to be okay. I just have to take this moment as it is and not focus on like, oh, I just want to feel better. I want to feel better and be good in 30 minutes, like do all the things I have to do to feel better in 30 minutes. Well, right now, let's feel better right now. And that'll come.
Love that.
You know?
I love that. Are you someone that struggled with anxiety or depression or any type of mental health issues up until this year?
You know, again, I didn't know what to call it sometimes. I did have, I remember actually after I gave up my Miss Arkansas crown and I was in like my senior year of college, I hit a really low point and I was I just felt so lonely and like isolated. You know, looking back on that time, I actually adopted my cat during that time because I just needed, and she's in New York with my sister right now because my move, I don't quite have, like I can't have her here yet, but I got her during that time because I just needed something. And she actually, I tell people like, she's not registered, but she is fully an emotional support animal for me. And like her and I have been through so much together, but so I did experience it in college. And then, my brother and sister really struggle with it. So I always kind of understood it and I was around it growing up. So I actually really know how to help my friends when they go through it. And just like, again, I always come back to breathing when I'm trying to help myself or help others through those moments. But, and then, this past year, like some things flared up again. And I think it was, again, this isolation feeling that kind of puts me in a little hole. And, you know, I remember last year, I guess, during COVID when it had hit me pretty bad in like April or May, after I kind of like realized what was going on and like pulled myself out of it as best as I could, or more so just like was aware of it.
Yeah.
When I kind of jumped back into my journey of like feeling better, I kind of did what I just talked about, but I was like, okay, this is day one of investing in my mental health. Okay. Day one literally consists of shower today. Go on a 10-minute walk. It doesn't even have to be go be outside.
Yeah.
Breathe fresh air. Talk to a bird. Like literally just do things that bring me joy. And it doesn't have to be 5 million things. Cause I know sometimes some people, and I'm one of these that like love spiritual growth and just like get so invested in growing that I'm like, oh, well, at any given moment, every single morning, I could pick up my stack of books in my drawer right here. Every single morning I take like 5 books outside with me. And I'm like, I do open all of them, but I'm one of those people that I'm like, oh, well, I have to journal. I have to write my other gratitude journal. I have to read this. I have to do this affirmation. I have to listen to my church. And it's like, whoa. You don't have to do 15,000 things that are supposed to make you feel better. Pick one. Just pick one and show up for yourself in one little way. And that was, I think, my biggest thing for this past year's example with the pandemic. Just when I hit my low point was when I was aware and I decided I want to feel better. I'm ready to feel better. I want to process this and feel this, but I want to feel good. I just started doing little things. And the first day I remember being like, I showered, I made a healthy, fresh meal for myself. And I think I did go just like sit outside and like look at the birds and like look at the flowers in my backyard and appreciate that and be present with it. And then after that, I do remember that whole first week I was counting. I was like, okay, I'm on day 3 of investing in my mental health. On day 3, I did this and it looked a little different than day 2 and then day 10. And then I stopped counting, but then I was back and I felt like I'd gone through the process. And of course, I think we all like relapse in these positions. It's tough, of course, and finding what works for you is important. But I definitely think, trying to just remind myself on a daily basis, do something every single day, even if it's small, that I know makes my heart and my soul feel good, then I have a better chance at being happy and not falling back into my anxious or depressed ways. It's tough because it seems like when we look at the big picture of I can't wait to feel better. I can't wait to be myself again. But sometimes it's as simple as just like taking the little moments that day and focusing on the present, the now, and not looking at the future of like, oh, I can't wait to be me again. It's like, well, let's be me right now. What's a little thing I can do right now to feel myself?
I really love that.
Yeah. And I know that fear was hard for everyone. So, and again, in different ways, none of it's apples to apples. So,
yep. Do you think that once you got to LA is when you really started growing in the different ways of like using all your different journaling and manifesting and just being around that environment? Or what do you think really sparked that within you?
I think so. I have to be completely honest. Like, and LA is such a beautiful, beautiful part of my journey, and LA gets a bad rep. Um, it really does. And I like to squash that because it is what you make it. Just what any place in this world is, any relationship is in this. It's like, it's all how we decide to make it. And I have such amazing people. I have met so many great people that are in LA and that are still there that, I mean, I would take a bullet for, not to be dramatic, but like, I love those people, and they have pushed me in so many ways that I definitely think it was, like being surrounded by so many like-minded people that also were so dedicated and eager to go on this journey and to like have, I mean, it sounds all pretty and cute, but it's like, no, it's hard. Like anyone on this like journey for more and like spiritual awareness and growth and development, it's like, you have some really hard conversations with yourself and others that you like have options. Like, you can stay the same or you can grow from it. And that's, I think, been a current theme for me the past like 6 months, especially, is just understanding, like recognizing my flaws a little bit more, understanding my ego, the scenarios that it gets in the way, and how I can manage it. My ego's never going to go away, and it's healthy to have an ego of some sort, but how I manage it and what triggers me and all of the different things. But I think LA and the people and my family there, definitely, they sparked this in me, and they helped me because they're also on it. And that's why I said it earlier, but I just can't say enough about surrounding yourself with good people, and also don't give up if you don't have them right now. I feel like I once felt like hearing this when people would be like, oh, I have this and that and that. I always had good friends, but it's a different level. It's taken me to a different level, these friendships. And I always try to encourage girls, especially, that like they should keep looking to find those people and don't give up on that, because the friendships, those are so important, and you can have it too, kind of thing, and I think sometimes girls get discouraged when they haven't quite found their group that they gel with. But I just can't say so enough about my people that I want everyone to have those relationships and really be able to have a support system around them that builds them up and encourages them and makes them better and goes on that journey with them.
Let's take a quick break to chat about our amazing sponsor, Press Premium Alcohol Seltzer, the only woman-owned seltzer among the top 10 seltzer brands. I fell in love with Press last summer, first off because of how chic the packaging is, but also because of how truly delicious the flavors are. In my opinion, they taste more like an expensive cocktail than your typical seltzer, and they also aren't super carbonated, so you don't feel bloated just after a few sips. They're perfect for sipping by the pool all summer long. All the flavors were developed by Amy, the founder, in her kitchen, which obviously made me fall that much more in love with the brand. They have 9 premium flavors, my personal favorites being the lime lemongrass and pomegranate ginger. I'm all about supporting women-owned businesses, and I'm honored they have the same mission. To get your hands on Press, go to enjoypress.com to find a retailer near you. Now let's get back into the episode. How do you think that you got into the rhythm of meeting those types of people? Were it the places you were showing up at? Was it yoga classes? Was it modeling? How did you meet these really tight-knit people?
I think just as we went over to some of my experience and background, I am in a lot of places, and because I know it is harder for some people if they're not actively putting themselves in those situations. But I will say, like, modeling, again, so grateful for it. Modeling when I was Miss Arkansas, you can attest to this too. We've met so many incredible people in our industries that I do feel really fortunate for that, because maybe we had a better shot to find those people because we were in, female dominated industries at one point or another, that we were able to connect. but it was, I guess, different situations because I can kind of think like some were through mutuals, I guess, mutual friends. Others were from modeling. Like one of my best friends, she was my makeup artist on a photo shoot in Kansas City. And then she moved to LA. And then the next year I moved to LA and we reconnected out there. And she's one of my best friends to this day. So it's like, I did meet her, I guess, in the industry of some sort. But it ranges because I like to go into any situation, and I guess I am outgoing, and I like to meet people. So again, I know that that's not as easy for everyone, but I think if it's not as easy for you, something I would say to those people is like, give yourself an affirmation going into a social situation or going into a networking event or a dinner, or, your girlfriend's like, hey, let's grab a drink. And I'm also going to invite two of my other girlfriends that you've never met. And that might make some people nervous, but just checking in with yourself and giving yourself the affirmation of like, okay, I'm going to go into this dinner tonight with these girls that I don't know with an open heart. I'm going to be open to giving and receiving love and friendship in all forms, whatever universe, God, whoever has in store for me. And I've actually found myself with my move to Puerto Rico in the past few months, giving that affirmation to myself going into social situations or meeting people in my neighborhood or whatever it might be, with that same thing of like, it still does make me nervous sometimes to meet people. I mean, it's not always easy, but if the intention is like, I really want to put myself out there and I am worthy of a good friendship. I'm a good friend and I want one in return. Open my heart and walk into the room with that open heart. And it's the inevitable, I mean, it doesn't mean you're always going to connect with everyone and be best friends, but at least you're opening your heart and body to the experience if it's going to be there, So
Totally.
I just want to encourage people on that because I think it's definitely, making friends is hard. And I think if you're not in industries or places that you can really connect with people, but if you don't, then think of somewhere where you're like, oh, I love yoga. And I feel like yoga is where I tap into spirituality. I want to meet someone that feels the same way. Go to more yoga classes, talk to the person after. I mean, I know the pandemic makes things different, but talk to someone, strike a conversation after yoga with someone maybe you would have never talked to before. They might be your freaking soul sister.
You're so right. I feel like for so many people, and this is for myself included, you just have to get out of your own head instead of worrying about what the encounter is going to be like. It's another thing going back to just presence, just like what you were talking about. If you're present in the moment and not so worried about what someone else is going to think about you, then you get to actually be yourself and let your personality shine a little bit.
Yeah. And again, this book I'm reading, I read literally this morning, it was talking about the presence and just like role playing and how we all assume a role most days and we give other people roles. So, like you go to a bank and you assume the roles of the person behind the counter and you're the customer. They're supposed to give you something. So you start talking different to them because you guys have a different dialect because you want something and they're supposed to give it to you kind of. Whereas if you went to a yoga class and you want to make a friend, you're going to have a different energy and you're going to hold yourself differently in that conversation because you're maybe trying to make a friend, where it basically is saying like, if you let go of any expectation you have of others and then the expectation you have for yourself as far as roles go, then you get to actually show up as yourself and then the rest it'll be done. Like, so it is, so if you just be present with that and eliminate, whether it's the fear or, the insecurities of making friends, you can really just show up as you are and go from there. And then it's not so hard because typically in a conversation too, it's like they might be really nervous too, but they're all for friendship,
Mm-hmm. Two people are wanting the same thing.
True. And that's why, like, with this conversation, I'm always like, I hear that with girls so often. And I'm like, I want all girls to be surrounded by good girls. Yeah. I want all of us to be friends and to be hanging out and being all the same team. Like, not to sound like fairy tale here, but it exists and your people are out there. And if you haven't yet found them, don't give up. Like, keep showing up as your authentic self and they're going to appear.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And would you consider that you've always been a very confident person, a very sure of yourself person, or did you have to work on that a little bit too?
If I'm being honest, naturally it was always there, but there's definitely like like any person, I'm not going to put this as just a woman, any person, we all have insecurities. We all overthink things or get in our heads about things. You know, we're our biggest critics sometimes. And, you know, there have been moments where I would say I've like self-sabotaged with myself because I was in my own head. And that will play with your confidence and play with, you know, mess with your insecurities and highlight them. But yeah, I would say it did. I could tell from an early age that I was more confident and just excited to live. I'm very enthusiastic. So I think like maybe that came with the territory a little bit. And I will say my mom always told me from a very early age, I was extremely independent to the point where she was like, I didn't even know what to do with you. Like you just were independent. And like, I wanted you as a child to like want more assistance, but you just walked to the beat of your own drum. So
that served you well.
I love it, but it's, again, there's with anything, it's a strength, but with strengths, it comes sometimes consequences or some harder things. But yeah, I'd say it was there for the most part. But again, I just want to make that clear. I think I've struggled though, and it still is ongoing. I mean, that's why I feel like everything, I just always have to keep checking in with myself. You know, every experience and chapter of life has brought out different, you know, wins and different obstacles. So it's ongoing. Never, I think it's just an ongoing work, whether you're the most confident person ever, or you are so shy to walk into a room, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you've talked a lot about affirmations, which, you know, I am obsessed with my affirmations. And I think anytime that people are new to this concept or that they've heard us talk about it and just been like, oh my gosh, that's like a bunch of hocus pocus. You're just writing things down, whether you believe it or not. But I really do believe in the power of affirmations. And I think you do such a great job of this because you're vocal about it on your social media. And I also know it's a big part of just who you are. Is that something that you have just implemented into your everyday routine? How'd you get started on this? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say, and I love this conversation, so I'm glad you love it.
I'm right. Like, this is our language.
It's important. And I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I think a lot of this comes from, again, let's refer to a phase that I didn't quite understand. I was doing it, but I was doing it with modeling, being in the industry, modeling, being Miss Arkansas. Gosh, I look back to when I was Miss Arkansas and I'm like, I'm 27 years old right now. And I think I was 20 when I won Miss Arkansas. And it's just crazy to me. It's just crazy. And I just think of all the growth over the years and I wouldn't change a thing, but I definitely remember during that time, like constantly comparing myself to the other girls and constantly checking those stupid pageant boards and just letting social media tell me who I am rather than me telling them who I am. And I just got the chills because that takes me back to like a very hard time of everyone else telling me who I am essentially, and everyone else getting to decide how pretty I am or how fit I am or how fit I'm not actually at that time. All the different things. And I think it was during that time that I realized like I have to show up for myself in new ways. And back then I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I remember at least telling myself in my head when I would walk into a room, especially in those group situations for pageant stuff, when you're around all the other title holders or at Miss USA and being like, okay, Leah, like you're in the room for a reason. If that's all you get, if that's all you can understand and comprehend, just tell yourself that you're in the room, you made it here. This is an accomplishment. You're a badass. You worked hard to be here. Don't sell yourself short. Sounds like it was all great and awesome, but it was hard. That still didn't make me feel awesome. But I remember just like having to have these conversations with myself, especially when I was Miss Arkansas and all the pressure it brought to just keep showing up for myself. Fast forward LA now. I was always interested in like self-help and self-growth books kind of leading up to LA, but I really like started diving into it more once I got there. And I really got into meditation and breath work and all this other fun stuff that I can go on and on about. But I think it was when I started really picking up books that started to like speak to my soul that I started to develop like a new verbiage and language. And that's when like these affirmations from certain books, there's this book that I will share. I call it my Bible, but it's called Living with Joy. And at the end of each chapter, there is like 2 pages of affirmations just to whatever the chapter was going over essentially. And that's when I really was like, wow, like this is really beautifully said. And sometimes I would get in my head of, well, that's not how my mind thinks all the time. Like my mind doesn't always say like, I am an open-hearted beam of light and I will bring joy to all who surround, all this like really pretty stuff. But then I realized I'm like, okay, but the concept is there. And if I can just tap into that going into certain things, whether it's a work situation, a personal situation, a relationship, my everyday life, if I woke up that day not feeling awesome, but I need to remind myself who I am and how hard I've worked to be this person. That's when I start tapping into that. And it might be as simple as being like, I'm a light. Leah, you are love. You come from love, you know, and telling myself those things. And I think affirmations scare people sometimes because they feel like it's weird. And at least when I started getting into them, I remember, the book I was reading maybe was telling me to say it in the mirror. And that's very common, but it feels a little weird if you're not quite into that concept yet, you know? And I remember like looking in the mirror and being like, you are beautiful. You are kind. Like, and I was like, okay. But then I started loving it. And so now, and as I referenced several times already, it's a habit now. It's just literally like second nature. It comes so natural now that I just know like when I feel myself and I do it in the mornings, I actually actively like write one out every morning, but I also am just actively doing it as I process life every day, situations. And especially when I was talking about friends, like going into situations, and I always really like to do it with relationships, whether it be romantic, I'm single, romantic, or like friendship. I'm like, okay, like I am a light. I come from love. I open my heart to give and to receive love, you know, and just, it does become natural, where I would also encourage anyone with affirmations. Like if it feels funny at first, it's okay. Everything's hard at first. Remember the first time you rode a bike? Like it felt weird. Like you didn't know that feeling yet. Or the first time you kicked a soccer ball or whatever it might be. First time we put eyeliner on for girls, it's like, whoa, what am I doing here? But you eventually start feeling it, you know it, and it becomes second nature to the point where your thoughts now are starting to think this way. And if I just remind myself who I am and what I work on and what I know to be true about myself, I'm going to go into this specific situation right here in front of me, feeling perfect, feeling myself, feeling my authentic, genuine self. And that's going to shine through because I know it in here. Now it's time to let it manifest in the outer world.
Beautifully said.
I'm very passionate about that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And it sounds like you fully understand the importance of morning routines and getting yourself in the right headspace. You've talked a little bit about yours, but let's really dive into it. So what are your morning routines? How are you setting yourself up every day?
It's so funny too. Like for people who do morning routines, it's like, you know, a day that you didn't, it's like constant catch up. And
yeah,
I'm going to butcher this term. Is it introverted extrovert? I think when I love being with other people and I love, you know, socializing, being in the outer world, I get energy from other people, but I'm also very, very inward.
Introverted. Yep.
Yeah. If I don't take the time, and I always look at it this way in my affirmations, like in order for me to be a light, to go out and encourage others, I have to first fill myself up. If I do not give myself the same amount of love, attention, and energy that I so willingly give to others, then I literally will crash within an hour. Like it's just, I can just see it. I know it. I've experienced it and it's not fun. I don't like it. So now I'm like, it is important to me, you know? And even with my roommate, like we talked about it, like, I'm like, okay, mornings are very important to me. That's when I get energized. So we kind of like set like a little rule, and it's just like healthy boundaries though of, you know, don't talk to me before like 9 a.m. kind of thing. Like I like to sit outside and I take my stack, and we'll go into it more in depth, but I can totally tell the days that I didn't do it. I feel like I'm just trying to get back to like equal that day. I'm just trying to find my happy spot. But if I just fill myself up in the morning, I'm up here. I'm cloud 9 going to the day. So it's like, okay, like some things might happen throughout the day, might drop my vibration a little bit, but then I have an affirmation, you know. When I do morning routine, I'm like fully down here. I'm like just trying to like get up to like a center, you know, and define my alignment. So right now, and this is also, I just always say, give yourself grace because it's not going to look the same forever. For some people it might. But my life is, I'm on the go a lot. I travel a lot. I can't have the exact same setup every morning. It's just not the lifestyle I have right now. So just being, you know, adaptable, I guess, in that. But I have my Living with Joy book that I've read that book like 3 times all the way through. I'm about to start it again just for fun, but I open it every single day. And I just like let the pages tell me what I'm supposed to see that day. And I just trust that. And I always just, because I'm also a crazy note taker, every time I open the book to a page, something's underlined. So of course my eyes go there and I'm like, whoa, that's for me today. And I might read a page and a half if I want a little bit more context, or I might read 4 sentences. And that's, you know, on my social media, I share that a lot too, because a lot of the times I'm like, man, this is dead on. Other people need to hear this, you know, so I'll share that. But, so that's one of them. I have a Living with, I don't know, it's like an old book that I swear no one's ever heard of, but it was my grandma's and she was really special to me. And when she passed away, I was the one going through her books and I found this book and it was bookmarked. It's like a 360, it's like a devotional essentially, but for simple, a path of abundance or something. And when I found it, it was bookmarked to my birthday. And when she passed was not my birthday. And her and I had a really special relationship. So I was like, Grandma, loud and clear, man, like this is for me. And like, this is for me. And so I have read that now for almost 2 years straight.
Wow.
And it's crazy because I will move to tears some mornings because I just feel like my grandma, she's my angel and I know she's guiding me. And it's always so dead on that it scares me. And it's like, I remember reading this page exactly that I read today a year ago, but it hit differently, but it still is relevant. You know, it's just so beautiful. So that's a daily one. Then I always like to take my journal, my actual hand journal that I write in. And then I have the book I'm currently reading. It's called A New Earth. And you know, that one might get read. That's normally like my evening read, but I like to take it with me if I want a little chunk of it that morning. And then I also, on my cell phone, I have the 5-minute journal app, and I do that in the mornings as well. So again, it's super expensive. And then I have my church does like a daily prayer thing. And I normally like to start everything with that, just like a little prayer, like 5 minutes. I have my eyes closed. I'm listening to a prayer and talking to God, kind of getting centered before I go into all that. Again, that sounds like a lot, but what I've learned is like, have all the tools. I'm just someone that likes to see all my stuff, and it's okay if I only touch one of them. But even spending that 5 minutes is like so important to me, and moving my body some days, and I just listen to myself. I'm like, you know, maybe I'll go on a 3-mile run that morning or a nice walk and then like sit by the water and meditate. But just knowing that like, I have to do something. I have to give time to myself or I can't give it to others. And I just have seen that be so clear for my day to day. If I don't do it, it's just, I'm completely off and my energy is different. And then that's not fair to the people around me either, you know, because now I'm giving them a different energy because I didn't just take care of myself first.
Totally. Do you listen to the Church Home app every morning?
I do.
Right. When you said that, I was like, oh my God.
Wait, that's the one you listen to?
Oh yeah. And oh my gosh, I swear by that. Like that is the best way to start your morning with their guided prayers. I love them.
Their voices are just like so soothing. And like, I mean, and I will say, I really, this year with the pandemic has been really tough, like not being able to go to church. And I was an active churchgoer, and sometimes I would go twice a week. And especially in LA, I had a Wednesday night church home, and then a Sunday church that I also enjoyed. So if I needed a little extra that week, I would do it. And I loved the community aspect of it. The people I would go to church with, that was kind of our time to like, to connect. And I feel like without with the pandemic, it's been hard to have that community for people that do love the church and being in it physically. So when they, you know, started that, I was super grateful. I think they actually started that right before the pandemic. I feel like it was like a month before.
Like right before.
Yeah. And it was perfect. And so, yeah. And that I love too, because it's like 5 minutes, like it's between 4 and 7 minutes every day. And it just like gets you in the mindset, you know, it just relaxes your heart a little bit. You get to slow down and just, I like this morning, my back was hurting and I was like doing it with my eyes shut. And I was just kind of stretching and it just felt good to be present with that. So you do that and it's a good one. So anyone
Girl, for anyone listening, you need to do it. It helps so much. And I've seen you talk in the past, and I need to pick your brain a million times over this because you've talked about fasting. And this is something that people see a lot of. And I know the purpose of what it's designed for, but I would love to hear your intention behind it and how you structure yours.
Yeah. So this was actually, so I just did one I just shared on social media. I think it was last week. I did almost a 3-day one. So funny. I actually ended it a little early because I met new girlfriends out in Puerto Rico. And I was like, I want to go to dinner with them. And this is important to me too. So I ended it a little early so I could go to dinner and be social, but having that balance is nice too. So we can talk about that. But
absolutely.
I actually started doing it because when I first moved to LA, I started doing the Daniel fast, which for people who don't know, it's a fast in the Bible that it's essentially 21 days and it's supposed to be your fasting for like prayer. So I did it with one of my churches in LA and I did it 2 years. This was the only year I didn't do it in January, but they do it for 21 days in January. And if you Google the Daniel fast, it's essentially like super, super clean, like no sugars, no carbs, no like processed carbs, no oils, no coffee, caffeine. It's just water, vegetables. Can't remember what the meat situation is. I think it's no meat though too. I only eat fish and eggs, so I don't even eat meat, but I think I did the first year at that time. So essentially you're just really simplifying your diet. And the whole thing is it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be a challenge and it's something you have to commit to. And through the church, the intention is kind of, okay, you dedicate your fast to something. You put an intention, a prayer behind it that you're going to pray and journal in your prayer journal every day during that time. And when you get weak and you're hungry and you want to cheat or you want to do this, you pray. And it's supposed to get you closer to God and just that builds your relationship and just be praying when it hits those times. And so I did that 2 years in a row and it was super beneficial. And I remember the second year, my intention with it was, or my first year doing it, I was like, I want my acting career to do something. I'm just like, I'm in LA now. I'm trying to put myself out there, apply for little like short films and stuff. And that was my intention going into it. And again, that's just an example of like, it doesn't have to, you can do a lot of things with it. I think I was on like the 5th day of my fast or something. And I got a text from like a mutual friend that was like, hey, like we have like some small little like extra roles in this movie that we're filming. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, God, thank you. And it actually filmed the last day of my fast. So it was like, I got it during the fast and then I did the job the last day of the fast. And that was like my first movie I'd ever done, So that was a testament to itself. And then now I didn't do that one this year, but that kind of sparked me into this like different approach with fasting where now I do anywhere from 1 to 4 days fully fasting where I only drink water. And then I might have a black coffee in the morning, but similar concept. And what I do with this is it's all for me, it's all for like my spirituality and just like mental clarity and growth and reflection. And sometimes like I can feel I'm being called to one and I just trust it and I go with it. I like to be more regular if I can, where I do them like every few months, but it's been a while since I had done one. But this most recent one, I was like, okay, it's time. I feel like my body, I'm very in touch with myself. I was like, I feel like I need to do this. I'm being called to it. And I go into it. I always like to do some sort of intention or mantra or kind of like what I want to get clarity on. But this one, I also dedicated to someone that I wanted to like send love and encouragement to, which I'd never done that before. And that was a really positive experience because it also, and I didn't tell them, by the way, I didn't actually tell that person or because it's not about like, that's not what it's about for me. It's kind of channeling their energy and knowing like while I'm doing this and when it gets tough, because it does get hard some days where you're like, whoa, I'd really love to eat and just cut this fast early. Like I got 12 hours and like, I'm good. But when you're going for 3 days at a time, you almost have to channel some sort of energy that's going to keep you going. And so me dedicating it to someone else, I was thinking of that person, throughout my downloads. While I was getting downloads and finding clarity on things, I was also sending like that love and encouragement. And I was hoping for clarity for them as well on their journey. So I think fasting is a really, really powerful thing. It's also just, again, I do it for mental purposes, but there are physical benefits, obviously, even if you just do a shorter one. So I definitely recommend people trying it and like starting with a 24-hour one. I think it's cool because you kind of realize, and on this past one I did, I got really clear on like in your weakest moments is sometimes like your chance to be your strongest. And that's kind of what I experienced on this one, of just like hitting, that really like low when you're kind of like, whoa, I'm hungry. I need a drink. Like I need food. I need something. And you're kind of feeling super weak and like, fatigued essentially. Yeah. And then you're like, but whoa, I can hear, there's no distractions. I can hear my thoughts really clear. I'm getting these downloads and I'm like, dang, that's strong though. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm so strong. I'm invincible. Like it's powerful. And I fully recommend people giving it a shot, because it's, again, if you go in with an intention and some sort of mantra and just kind of be open to what the experience is going to have for you. Again, this is a great opportunity for an affirmation, going into it and just being open to receive. Like, I think most people are pleasantly surprised. I also just like side notes on fasting, how I do and get by. I always make sure I don't really work out while I'm fasting. I don't recommend that. A light walk is fine, but just for pointers for people on that, don't go crush an hour lift at the gym and be fasting. Like that's not, you've got to treat your body like the temple it is during that time. It's still important to nourish yourself correctly, drink a ton of water, obviously, and get a lot of rest. During my fast, I normally go to bed at like 9, try to get a lot of rest, because your body is a little bit fatigued. And especially if it's your first time, you're not used to this feeling, but it is beautiful. And again, it was kind of inspired by the Bible and a more Christian approach years ago. And now it's kind of just turned into, I am religious and spiritual. So I kind of, it's funny the way I'm just a fair mix of it both, but I'm like, I pray to God, but then I'm like, oh, but it's also like the spiritual tapping in, to things. But I think it helps to have some sort of intention with it and just trying it. And yeah. I think it'll be super beneficial.
I love that you just brought up both being spiritual while also being full of faith. And I think that that's something that a lot of people get confused on. Sure. And I never really understood that there is a difference, but they're also very intertwined. Sure. Until in season 1, we had a girl come on and she is an intuitive, and she was talking about how she would get these downloads. Yep. And I feel like I'm starting to meet a lot of what I like to call my little angels in life that all have the same verbiage that are not connected to each other. Yeah. And you're another person that just brought up getting these downloads. And I know you brought up earlier being an intuitive. Can you explain to our audience a little bit of what that means to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's like, it's so funny. And my roommate and I, we talk about this sometimes, like it's such a blessing and sometimes a curse, but with any gift, I think you have to learn how to use it and how to manage it. And that's definitely something like it sometimes like kills me, like how in touch I am with things, to the point where like I feel like I can read minds, and then I'll like bring up what's being talked about. And one time my roommate was like, I just wish sometimes you weren't in my head. Sometimes I just want to have my thoughts alone. And I'm like, trust me, I want that too. Like, I don't want to be in your head. I don't want to know exactly what you're thinking and like the way you're processing that, but I do. And not always, but a lot of the times I'm just very hyper aware and sensitive. And I think in my relationships, I do start understanding people. I see people very well. The other night I went to dinner with a new friend, literally like I knew him 24 hours, a neighbor, one of my neighbors in the neighborhood. And I had said something and he was like, how do you like, he literally did this. And he was like, looked back and he was like, I feel like you see inside of me. Like you like know me and you don't even know me. And I'm like, yeah, it's but it's also like, it's a part of it and it's a beautiful thing. But I would say like, and that's the intuitive side. That's I think intuitive and download can be a little different because I think you can still get downloads without being intuitive. But I would say as far as the downloads go, it's when, again, I think when you're open and aware and just, again, open to receive. I like to always like kind of come back to like open to receive, whether it's love, encouragement, financial stability, just be open to receive, but also give, you know. I think when you're in this like open-hearted mindset, you start to realize you're more aware than you think. And that's something I encourage some of my friends on, that I'm like, you do know the way. You do hear the downloads are coming. You're just kind of blocking them right now. So open up a little bit and don't block your blessings is another thing I like to say, because I think sometimes you know it's there. You're feeling something in your body or your mind. Like someone can send you a text message, right? And whatever your body reacts to that text message, lean into that. So if someone texted you, maybe you're like in a relationship and it's kind of on the road, like rocks, but you're like, you're still fighting for it. You guys are still good, you know, in terms, and you get a text message from them, their name pops up on their phone. How does that make you feel? Are you really excited? Are you getting anxious? Are you sad? Are you insecure all of a sudden? We know the way, but sometimes we're just blocking it because again, we don't yet know what to call it. And I think with the downloads, if you're open to it, you're kind of on a path of pursuing yourself and your self-growth, you'll start to realize they're coming. They always were coming in. You just didn't really know how to like filter them in your mind. You didn't know like when the download came in, how to catch it. And like, we can even look at a game as like Mario Kart, you know, when you're like driving and there's like the boxes are there with the question marks. Okay. Well, the box is there. Are you going to open it and explore it? Okay. Or are you just going to curve around it because you kind of just want to get to the finish line? Okay. So you can, and then once you break it, it's like, okay, in here now we have this awesome superpower that I just unlocked because I went there. You know what I mean? And then you tap into that. And then a further analogy on that, and this is a new one. This is just coming to me now, this whole donkey or Mario Kart thing. But, you know, even the banana thing too, like someone can drop a banana and you can kind of decide like to go into it. And then you have some sort of repercussion or you can like swerve. But essentially I'm saying they're there. You just might be missing them. The more that you give awareness and openness in your journey and like pursue that inner peace and self-growth, the more clear it'll get. And that's something that you don't have to be doing this for years or on this journey for years to like quite get there. I mean, you might be new to it. And that was kind of my experience, that I always kind of had it. I just didn't know how to fully tap into my potential with it. And then I started reading the things. I started doing the breath work. I started doing a meditate. I started just tapping into different resources because they're all that we have unlimited resources to tap into these kind of practices and find what works for you and what unlocks it. But it's there. I think it's there in everyone. You just have to be kind of willing and open to receiving the download. What you do with that little special thing that came out of that question mark box that you hit with your Mario Kart, like, what are you going to do with it now? You get that choice. You know, you can save it for a rainy day, I guess, or you can use it in the outer world and more downloads will come.
Yeah. And how do you recommend if somebody's saying like, okay, I'm open, I want to get there so that I can be on that path? What do you recommend that they start doing, implementing resources?
Yeah. You know, social media is such a beautiful thing because, you know, if there's someone, and this is just the first example I can start and then it kind of goes down, but if you're following someone, whether someone is following you right now or they're following me and they feel like they resonate with some of the things we post, or they resonate with our energy, message that person, ask them, hey, what is that book that you're reading? I'm interested in that. That spoke to me. Or, and again, that's why I think social media first, look at the people that seem to be living what you kind of are interested in, you know, and see what resources they're sharing or talking about. And most people that are on this path and like are doing these practices, they want to share it with the world. Like this conversation itself, I love sharing this stuff because I want everyone to experience this kind of joy, you know, and start there. And then maybe they'll recommend one book and then you'll read one book. And what I found from a lot of my self-growth books and just practices, these people on this journey, they want to give you other resources. So then every book that I have read, they all refer to another book. And I'm like, oh, let me mark that. You know what I mean? And it's like, they want you to get unlimited resources because they know it's not just you. I will say, again, things for myself, I've already named them, but like Living with Joy is a really good one. A daily affirmation or devotion book's really good. Podcasts are really good. As we're talking right here, like, this is a way, you know, if someone resonates with what I'm saying, message me, please. If they resonate with another one of your guests, message them. We want to share. A podcast that I really love that has really helped me on my journey and just like learning is Jay Shetty's. He is one of I refer to him so often, but Jay Shetty is just, I read his book, Think Like a Monk. I really recommend that as well. He's one of my like spiritual idols, I guess, if you will. And I feel like he wouldn't ever want to be called an idol because he's just so humble and cool and like a monk. But he has taught me more than I can even express. So I mean, there's so many resources out there. And like, I know a lot of people with meditation, they don't quite feel comfortable with it, but you know, with the pandemic right now, you can't even really go in groups of meditations anyway. So try it at home by yourself, give it a shot. Literally watch a YouTube video that says how to meditate. I don't know, like it exists though. And I think it's just taking that first step into it and you'll unlock so many things, you know, because all of these different resources, they really do provide you with other resources. So just getting started, find something, whether it's a meditation, a YouTube video, a podcast, someone you follow, and that too. And this is always said with my social media, whether I have 5,000 followers or I have 5 million followers, I always want to be authentically sharing who I am and what I'm about, because I know how it works. There's people I follow that have 500 followers, but they inspire me. And I resonate with things that they post. And I know if I'm sharing, and I know it because people message when I share these things, they are resonating with it. And I do think more people need to hear it and be aware of it. And sometimes I do tell myself, like, when I'm like, do I need to post another picture of my book? I'm like, yeah, you do. If you're feeling called to it, you should, because there's someone that follows me that this is their only source of spiritual, you know, dialogue or reading or literature. Like they might not see it, but it resonates with them. And it might just hit one day where they're like, I am going to message her and ask her what that book is, because I think I'm ready. You just never know when it's going to hit. And so I think, just finding people that inspire you. And I mean, a lot of it is online, but that's also, if you have someone in person too, that's a beautiful thing too. If you're like, well, my sister's super spiritual, I don't quite get it, but maybe I should ask her a question about it. Just start is the biggest thing I can say, is just find something that piques your interest in the slightest and lean into it.
Beautifully said. I think that's with anything too. If you have interest in something, it's never just going to happen. You always have to start. And then I think consistency is such a big thing too, that people are like, well, I did it one time. I meditated one time.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, with even the fasting, like the one that I was doing, that was the 21 days, it takes 21 days to build a habit. So it's just proven. Like it literally is just proven. Every single, whether it be the Bible, whether it be a spiritual book from a monk, it's always 21 days. It's like, you can't, that's why a lot of meditations are set up for 21 days. Like you have to do, like the Deepak Chakra one is 21 days. Like you have to commit to it, or what is it going to do? And I will say, you know, there was times in my early on in the journey with it all, like I still struggle. I'm not going to act like I don't. Like it's still sometimes hard to commit to something for 21 days, whether it be like, I have this little abundance book thing that I do that's 40 days. That's a lot. That's hard. Yeah. It's really hard to commit to that, but it builds habits. You know, the 21 days thing is true. So again, back to the very beginning of this conversation, this is advice, and I would send encouragement to people on this topic too. Don't look at it as 21 days. Click day one and do day one. Mm-hmm. Then the next day when you wake up, do day two. Don't think about, okay, I have 21 days. Okay, well, on that day I'm going here, and then that's going to be hard that day. Or like, okay, I'm 3 days and now only, you know, this many left. It's like, no. Because I did that and I failed when I look at the big picture and don't focus on the current one. So I think that's a part of that too. Don't be discouraged, because it's hard for everyone. Meditating was not easy for me at the beginning. at all. Journaling sometimes is still hard for me. So now I just do it when I feel called to it because my hand gets tired or I'm like, oh, I have so many things to say.
Mm-hmm.
I did yesterday. I bullet pointed things because I was like, I have so many things that I processed over the past week. I can't possibly write all of this out the way I would like to. So I'm just going to bullet point things and I can come back to these 10 bullets over the course of the next year if I want to and expand on it if I want to. And if not, at least I wrote it down and it'll trigger that thought process that I was having.
Well, I love that you just brought us full circle. I didn't even have to do anything.
I think my message is I want to encourage people to invest in themselves and to know who they are. Don't let other people tell you who you are. You know who you are. You've worked hard to be this person, gone through life. And at the end of the day, you're the one that goes to sleep and wakes up in your body. So treat it like a temple, invest in the things that make you feel joy and then share it. You're doing the work. It's impossible not to be a light to others.
And you're living proof of that. Like we started this whole conversation with the fact that you are a light. And I had no idea that this is something that it's so deeply ingrained in who you are. And I think it's a beautiful thing that anybody has that ability. They just need to realize it,
Yeah.
They need to tap into it. They need to do the work.
And it is the work. And the work, by the way, never ends. And that's all the great people before me that have been living this journey way longer than me. Because I'm on it. We're all on it. It never ends. Yep. We're never done. That's the part that it's exciting. So you're ready for the journey, buckle up and give it a shot.
I truly feel like I could talk to you and pick your brain forever. So we're probably going to have you back on the show because there's so many other things. Once I re-listen, I'll be like, I need to dive into this too. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. That was awesome. If you're loving the I Am More Than podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us so much. And if you haven't already, follow us on Insta at More Than Inc. for all things inspo, More Than merch, and soon we'll be posting info about our in-person meetups. We're so thankful to have you part of this community and are always here to remind you that you are so much more than. We'll see you next week.